It began with a letter. Caleb Horne, a once promising investigative journalist now reduced to blogging conspiracy theories in a moldy apartment in Knoxville, received an envelope that bore no postage mark. Its paper was coarse, like bark. Its seal was crimson wax pressed with the shape of an oak leaf. Inside, in black ink that smelled of soil and sap, was a single sentence. "Come home. The timber remembers. So must you. E." Elias Horne had been dead for 15 years, or presumed dead. He'd wandered into the Smoky Mountains one autumn to live off-grid in his old hunting cabin and never returned. The authorities called it a likely mauling, or a fall, or simply madness. No body was ever found. Caleb stared at the letter for hours. Something about the ink. It shimmered faintly under the light, like oil on water. He had nightmares that night. Trees bleeding sap. Faces behind bark. A cabin that breathed. And in the morning, he packed his bags. The drive took hours, then hours more. The GPS failed halfway up a gravel road marked only by a rusted deer skull, nailed to a pine tree. It was dusk by the time Caleb saw it. A rotting log cabin half sunken into the earth, the forest trying to reclaim it. The cabin sat like a carcass, crooked, black-mouthed, slouched beneath centuries of moss and rot. Vines snaked across its siding like veins. The windows were clouded, and the chimney oozed smoke that smelled faintly of mildew and burnt herbs. Inside, it was worse. The air was thick, like syrup. Dust hung frozen in shafts of dying light. The floor groaned under every step. Strange bundles of sticks and twine hung from the ceiling. Charms, perhaps, or warnings. He found Elias's journal beneath a loose floorboard, wrapped in oilcloth. On the first page, scrawled in jagged letters, "The forest is not dead. It is dormant. Do not wake it." Caleb stayed. At first he convinced himself it was for research. He'd write a story. My Uncle's Haunted Cabin, a descent into Appalachian myth. But deep down, he wanted something more. Elias had been the only family who treated him like more than a burden. And Caleb had always suspected there was more to the man's disappearance than bad luck. Nights were the worst. At night, the forest whispered. Not in wind, but in syllables, a cadence, words too warped to decipher. The trees groaned like sleepers with broken spines. Caleb swore he heard footsteps above the ceiling, but the attic was empty, except for bones. Tiny bones, arranged in spirals. And then, the dreams began. He saw Elias nailed to a tree, eyes missing, tongue wrapped in vines. He screamed without sound while something moved behind him. Tall and lean, with bark for skin and hollow, weeping eyes. He woke one night with dried mud beneath his fingernails and leaves in his mouth. The journal spoke of an ancient rite, the root calling, a ritual older than the Cherokee, performed when the land was still wild with god things and forest spirits. A way to ask the forest for knowledge, for power, or for forgiveness. It required ash, blood, and a name long forgotten, buried in the bark. Caleb found the cedar tree marked with Elias's symbol, a split circle wrapped in thorns. He cut his palm, let blood drip onto the roots. He whispered names from the journal, names that made his ears ring, names that the wind shuddered to hear. The ground pulsed, and then silence. Not the absence of sound, but a presence of quiet, something listening, watching. Beneath the soil, something stirred. That night, the cabin shifted. The cabin changed daily now. Walls rearranged. Doorways led to places that didn't exist. A hallway looped infinitely until he collapsed from exhaustion. The mirror in the bathroom no longer showed his reflection. Instead, it showed a version of him smiling with teeth made of splinters. He tried to leave, but the forest had sealed its borders. Every trail led back to the cabin. His phone showed nothing but static, even when powered off. The journal now wrote back, in his own handwriting, describing moments before they happened. He began to forget things. Small things at first. His middle name, his apartment address. Then, memories, faces, Words. The cabin fed on it. His fingernails blackened. His skin itched constantly. Bark flaked from his scalp. When he coughed, moths came out. The last page of the journal changed. When you forget your name, the forest will remember it for you. The entity came at last. It rose from beneath the roots like a memory long buried. Tall, featureless, made of moss and deadwood. It had Elias's voice, but not his mercy. It called itself the silence beneath bark. It offered Caleb a choice: surrender and be reborn as part of the forest, or resist and feed the roots. He resisted. He ran. For days, or was it years? The forest no longer obeyed time. He ran until he collapsed on the steps of the cabin, weeping blood, fingers now thorns, vision full of crawling vines. In the end, he crawled inside. The cabin opened to him. It breathed. It welcomed him. He carved his name into the wall with his own teeth, and the forest remembered him. Months later, a woman named Julia Crane, Caleb's old editor, received a letter. It smelled of pine and rot. The paper was coarse, the seal red wax, pressed with an oak leaf. Come home. The timber remembers. So must you. See. Julia Crane stared at the letter for hours. She hadn't spoken to Caleb in nearly a year, not since his disappearance after being fired. The last message he sent was garbled, full of gibberish, or what she thought was gibberish. The bark sees. The timber listens. It's hungry. Something about the letter disturbed her deeply. The smell of pine needles, wet soil, and decay lingered unnaturally in her office. But what disturbed her more was the handwriting. It was Caleb's. But it was wrong. Angular, rushed, like someone mimicking memory itself. Against her better judgment, driven by a mixture of guilt and dread, Julia made the journey. Into the same smoky mountains Caleb had vanished into. The road ended too soon. She hiked the final miles through a forest that grew unnaturally silent the deeper she went. Her phone died inexplicably. Birds fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to avoid the area. Then she saw it. The cabin. And standing beside it, smiling faintly, was Caleb. But it wasn't. He looked like Caleb, spoke like him. But Julia knew people. And this man wore Caleb like a coat. His smile never reached his eyes. His eyes were hollow, deep, full of shadow, not soul. The timber welcomed me, he said. Now it's your turn. She demanded answers, but the longer she stayed, the more the trees seemed to lean in, listening, watching, whispering in languages she'd never heard but somehow understood. He showed her the journal. Pages now bound in skin. Words that rearranged themselves depending on who read them. And the truth emerged. The cabin had been here for centuries, maybe longer. Not built, grown, fed by souls who came seeking truth, or peace, or escape. It took them, changed them, and sent new seeds into the world. Julia wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last. She tried to run, of course, but every direction turned inward. The forest was a spiral now, with the cabin at its core. Time unraveled. Her memories blurred. Her name began to slip away, syllable by syllable. She awoke one morning with bark on her hands and moss in her hair. That night, the cabin opened its walls like a blooming flower, revealing stairs that descended into the earth. She followed them, not because she wanted to, but because it was already inside her. Beneath the forest was no soil, only timber. Endless, pulsating, living wood, like the roots of some world-sized parasite. Eyes opened between the rings. Mouths whispered in hundreds of voices. They offered her a gift, understanding. She refused, and was swallowed. Julia's consciousness did not die. It transferred, into the trees, into the archive of memories trapped beneath bark and blood. She felt Elias. She felt Caleb. Hundreds of others, bound in the grain of roots and fiber. Screaming, praying, singing, fading. The silence beneath bark greeted her with open limbs. You remembered your name too long. Now the forest will keep it safe. But Julia, unlike the others, fought back. She found a splinter of self, a shard of light deep inside the archive. And with it, she screamed a word not spoken in centuries, a word of unbinding. The timber recoiled. Roots snapped. The cabin shrieked. And somewhere, miles away, trees began to die. The cabin burned. Or rather, it collapsed, inward, like it had never been real. A dream folding into itself. Julia crawled from the ashes, skin blackened, body broken, but alive. The forest tried to regrow her, tried to reclaim her, but it could not hold her anymore. She hiked for 3 days before she reached a ranger station. She was incoherent, feral, bleeding bark. They thought she was mad. She spent 6 months in a psychiatric ward. Then she disappeared again. The nurse said she left in the night, muttering about cutting down the archive. A year later, a woman in Atlanta found a strange letter on her doorstep. Coarse paper, smelling of pine and rot. Wax seal. Inside, in shaky handwriting, "Come home. The timber remembers. So must you. J."